Hello everyone, welcome back. This is our second talk in our series about time, and today we're going to look at biological time, or how our bodies perceive time. And also, we talk in mindfulness class quite a bit about being in the present moment, and how does the body actually perceive now? You'll find it's quite fascinating. So scientists have shown that we actually have numerous internal clocks in our bodies, and they tell time across 12 orders of magnitude, from milliseconds to minutes, days, years, millennia. And these clocks allow us a sense of regularity in our lives and in our bodies. So I read a book called The Brain is a Time Machine by a UCLA neuroscientist named Dean Buonomano. And in it, he says that our body has numerous clocks that are imperceptible to us, but work on an oscillation feedback loop between hormones and neurons. And it's similar to real world clocks that also rely on an oscillation feedback loop. So an example in our bodies is how we align our systems with the circadian rhythm of our planet. So in the mornings, our body sends out alerting impulses and suppresses any sleep impulses so that we can be awake and productive during the day. And then as day turns to night, the opposite happens, and it suppresses the alerting impulses and brings up dopamine or the sleep impulses. And these kinds of systems, that when they work well, allow nothing to become too dominant. So we're not awake all the time, and we're not eating all the time, or we're not sleeping all the time. And when we can achieve that steady state, then we have this optimal existence. And so the body can do this on its own, through its own internal mechanisms. And with our senses, there are also different clocks. So they've shown that our sense of vision has takes a certain amount of time. Hearing takes a certain amount of time, and all of these senses come together to create a unified whole in our minds, but they take a time, and it's been known to take at least 1/10 of a second, which again might be imperceptible to you, but the brain just needs time to piece together this sense of unity. So an example is when we watch a movie. So a film is projected at exactly 24 frames per second. And what happens is the brain understands that there is a gap between each of these individual frames and pieces information together, the missing information, so that it appears to us as a lifelike, streaming, unified whole. It's really an amazing feat. And so there is this gap between the time it takes for us to see something or hear something and for our brain to process it and understand it as now. There's another fantastic example in sports. So there was a tennis player named Andy Roddick, and he was able to hit the ball across the court at 155 miles per hour, which is really fast and makes it very difficult for the opponent to hit back. So once the ball is in air, it takes about 1/3 of a second for it to go from one side of the court to the other. But as I mentioned, our brain needs time, at least 1/10 of a second, to process that. And so in that 1/10 of a second that we're processing it, the opponent is processing it, the ball has actually moved 20 feet. So the opponent's understanding of now is a ball that's 20 feet behind where it actually is. But again, the brain is able to piece together the information of where the ball is now, what we're seeing, and where it will be, in order for the opponent to hit that ball back and beat Andy Roddick. So it's an amazing skill that we can mirror in our own lives, in our own mindfulness practice. I attended a talk a number of years ago with Pema Chodron and Katie Lang, and they discussed this concept of the gap, how we can cultivate that gap in our mindfulness and meditation practice, and then bring that out into the daily lives, so that again, we don't have to let any too strong emotional state dominate us, so that if we're feeling anxious or angry, we can try and find and cultivate that gap, that sense of calmness and stillness, the essence of a moment between our thought and our action. and allow that sense of equanimity and calm to enter us. It's very much similar to the practice I discussed before called stop, where you stop, take a breath, observe, and then proceed. And that ability to find that gap, Pema Chodron came up with a wonderful name for it. She called it gapacious, that cultivate that gapacious quality in our lives, which I just think is wonderful. It's very, first of all, very close to the word spacious, but it's a new word that describes that moment that we can take and cultivate in our lives. So can we achieve that same steady state in our emotional lives, in our mental lives, that our body regulates with its own internal clocks, and find that gap and cultivate it to bring that equanimity from our practice into our daily lives? That is the goal of mindfulness. So I'll provide the links to Dean Buonomano's talk and his book, which I highly suggest you read. And in the next class, we're going to be looking at emotional time. I hope you'll join me. Thank you.